I wasn't there when my son was born. I missed the honeymoon. And I sold the house we'd spent years saving for, $227,000 gone, just to keep the company afloat. Then came the 10-year anniversary party. I showed up, and security stopped me cold. "Sir, you're not on the list." I stood there blinking, looking at the guy in a black suit, tapping away on a tablet without even glancing up. I was on the steps of the very building I helped lease 10 years ago. The same one I took out a second mortgage for. Behind him, the glass doors shimmered under the glow of the company logo, like the universe was playing some cruel joke. "I'm one of the founders," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. He didn't even blink. "List says founders and family only." "I am a founder," I repeated. Behind him, I could hear the laughter echoing from the lobby. Glasses clinking. Music thumping in the background. I spotted my sister, Allison, near the bar, dressed to the nines in a deep blue gown, laughing with a group of strangers. She saw me, and then looked right past me like I didn't even exist. A second later, she leaned over and whispered something to the guard. He turned back. "She says you're not on the list." My mouth went dry. Not on the list. Not even a courtesy invite. After everything I poured into that company, sleepless nights, frayed relationships, missing the literal birth of my child because I was on a red-eye flight to pitch in Toronto, I wasn't even worth a name tag. I looked back at Allison. She lifted her champagne glass in a shrug, like it was out of her hands. Like it wasn't her name stamped on every document I helped prepare. Like she hadn't called me, sobbing, for years back when payroll was about to bounce, and I wired her 30 grand without blinking. I gave her a small smile. The kind that looks calm on the outside but feels like a storm's brewing underneath. Then I turned and walked away. No scene. No yelling. Nothing dramatic. Just stepped off the stairs, pulled my phone out of my coat, and opened a tweet I'd saved 3 days earlier. Something in my gut had told me this might happen. The tweet said just one word: sold. That was my crime, I guess. By the time anyone figured out what it meant, the paperwork was already delivered, and I was gone. 10 years ago, it was nothing more than a wild idea we scribbled on a whiteboard in Allison's garage. Back then, we were just two burnt-out corporate folks with a dream. I had the tech chops, back-end systems, architecture, cybersecurity. Allison brought the vision, the voice, the charisma investors eat up. We made a deal. I'd build the engine. She'd take the wheel. I was the one who said, "Let's go all in." And I did. I put that 3-bedroom house on the market, the one it took me 8 years to afford, quietly signed over the deed, sold it for $227,000, and funneled every last cent into the company. I didn't even tell my wife until the money was already transferred. We were supposed to be moving into a new place that spring. Instead, I rented a tiny 1-bedroom over a laundromat, and she stayed with her parents. That kicked off our first real fight. "You sold our house without saying a word?" she said, eyes wide. "It's only temporary," I told her. 6 months. This company's going to change everything. But 6 months became 18. Then 3 years. Eventually, we were sleeping in different rooms. She went into labor while I was stuck on a client call. She sent me a photo of our baby boy, and I just stared at it from a conference room table, 11:48 at night, still in the same hoodie I'd worn for days. I saved that picture. Still have it, buried between spreadsheets and pitch decks in my phone. Allison knew all of this. She was right there when I hocked my wedding ring just to make payroll one brutal January. She watched me burn myself out for what we built, while she basked in the spotlight. TEDx talks, glossy fast company spreads. But every time I tried to step into that spotlight or even ask for a proper salary, I got the same vague smiles and, "Let's circle back next quarter." At the 5-year mark, we pulled in $6 million in series of funding. My paycheck didn't budge. By year 7, we landed our first Fortune 500 client. Press release went out. My name was nowhere. When I asked why, Allison just patted me on the shoulder like I was some intern who got confused. "People don't care about who fixes the pipes," she said once. "They just want the water to run." That's when I started keeping records. Every late-night sprint. Every wire transfer I made. Every email where she swore we were equals. I stored them all, encrypted, backed up, and archived. I stayed quiet, played the good soldier, let her take the spotlight. Then I came across the shareholder restructuring documents. Turns out, she'd been chipping away at my ownership. Little by little. Across 3 quarters. It was all technically legal. I had signed those pages during a chaotic tax review period without realizing what I'd agreed to. My original 47%? Whittled down to 11.3%. Just enough to keep me calm. Just enough to keep me from being a threat. When I finally confronted her, she gave me that look, cool, composed, and said, "You know what optics are, right? You're not the face we need anymore." I was back-end. The plumbing no one sees. Funny thing is, that same back-end she dismissed? It's what kept us alive during the cyber attack. It's what locked down our security so we could land government contracts. It's what saved us from a $2.5 million breach. I should have walked away right then and there. But I didn't. I stuck around, like an idiot, because I kept replaying that one night in the garage years back when she looked me dead in the eyes and said, "No matter what happens, we do this together." Turns out, together had an expiration date. I didn't even get a direct invite to the 10-year gala. I found out about it through LinkedIn, a basic post with no emotion. Just Allison, dressed head to toe in gold, standing next to a cake shaped like the company's logo. Not a word about me. The RSVP link? Password protected. So I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I smiled. Not one of those polite, practice smiles. Not the exhausted kind either. This was different, the kind of smile that says, "I'm done playing the nice guy." I picked up the phone and called my lawyer. "You still have access to that holding company we set up in Delaware?" I asked. He did. "And you remember that clause we buried in the founding documents?" He remembered that too. Perfect. Tucked deep inside all that legal jargon we signed back when Allison couldn't even afford her own Uber was a little clause. It gave me an out, quiet, clean, and powerful. If my stake ever dropped below 12% without the board unanimously agreeing, I had the right to sell my shares to a third party without needing anyone's approval. What had happened? My shares were below 12%. And I had a buyer in mind. An old competitor. Someone we used to joke about. Small, hungry, with a reputation for being cutthroat. They offered me $6.2 million for my remaining stake. All I had to do was sign the papers. So I did. 3 weeks before the big party, I finalized the deal. Just like that, I sold out my share of the company's soul. And I didn't breathe a word of it to anyone. The moment I walked away from that building, still gleaming behind me like some shrine to betrayal, everything seemed to move in slow motion. The champagne, the music, the fake laughter from people in overpriced dresses. Even the security guy, still staring at his tablet, completely unaware he'd just escorted the ghost of the company's passed out the front door. My shoes crunched on the pavement as I walked to my rental. No one came after me. No one noticed. Not yet anyway. I slid into the car, didn't even start the engine. Just sat there, phone in my hand. The tweet had already gone out. Sold. One word. Cold as broken glass. Then I pulled up my private inbox, the one tied to that Delaware entity. For new emails. Funds received. Transfer complete. Contract executed. Welcome to the board. That was it. Deal done. Signed, sealed, wide. The company that Allison once called a joke with a cartoon logo now owned my 11.3% stake. And not just that, I'd also quietly bought out 3 small shareholders over the years. Folks who'd gotten fed up and wanted out. Together, our block was worth 19.8%. Enough for a seat at the board. Enough to break down the glass walls she'd built to keep people like me out. I didn't head home that night. Never returned the call from my ex-wife, probably checking if I was still breathing. I wasn't okay. But I was finally something else. I was free. I checked into a little roadside hotel about 30 miles away. Paid in cash. And I burned the clothes I had on. No, not metaphorically, I literally fed them to the fireplace. Every thread of the so-called founder uniform was gone. Then I unplugged. 3 full days off the grid. No phone. No email. No noise. Just the kind of silence that hums in your ears when your body finally stops bracing for the next punch. For the first time in what felt like forever, I slept like a human being. Back at the company, the panic started somewhere around the 40-hour mark. The tweet was catching traction, just in niche circles at first. People started whispering, then guessing, then digging. Eventually, someone got their hands on the clause from the founding docs. Tech Reddit exploded. He sold his shares? To who? Why? By Monday, they got their answer. The new shareholders sent a formal letter to the board, asking for access to financials, a vote, and clarity on recent restructuring around minority shares. And every move Allison had made? Every dilution? Her signature was on it all. That's when people started reaching out to me. My inbox blew up. First came an email from Allison. No hi. No, hope you're well. Just a subject line. What did you do? Next came one from the head of legal. Urgent. Need to talk. Then the CFO, please clarify. We weren't aware. But the best? A text from Allison. You think you can just walk away like a coward? I looked at it for a long time. Then I walked away because I was tired of cleaning up after your lies. She didn't reply. By day 5, an emergency board meeting was called. The new board member, our mystery buyer, showed up. They didn't recognize him at first. But he had everything. The contract. The clause. Every bit of paper I'd quietly archived over the years. He read my name into the meeting record. Then filed a motion. A review of founder misrepresentation. A vote to restructure leadership. Allison laughed, loud, dismissive, like the whole thing was beneath her. Until the audio played. A recording I'd made 6 months earlier. Her voice clear as day. He's a liability. Sure, he built the engine. But I run the car. We'll bleed him out slowly until he's harmless. Then silence. The board guy paused the tape and looked around. Well, he said. I kept the receipts. This time, someone finally listened. The motion passed. Allison got to keep her title. For now. But the ice had started to crack. I stayed gone. Changed my number. Shut down every account. Sold what little I had left in the city. And then, vanished. 2 weeks later, out of nowhere, Allison did what desperate people do. She went public. Posted a shaky, teary-eyed video online. Claimed she was blindsided. Said I was unstable. That I'd sabotaged everything we'd built out of bitterness. She cried on cue. Talked about sleepless nights and betrayal. Said I'd left the company in its darkest hour. And for about 5 minutes, the internet bought it. Until someone posted the full trail of shareholder documents. Then another person dropped the voice memo. Then someone else asked the obvious question, if he was so irrelevant, how did he still have the power to sell? And just like that, the tide shifted. Public opinion did a full 180. Investors started to panic. Even our biggest client, the one I had personally brought on board, pulled out and terminated their contract. The next day, Allison's LinkedIn profile disappeared. I heard later she tried to walk the whole thing back. Claimed the sale wasn't valid. Said I'd misled her. But the documents were solid. That clause? It held firm. The facts held. So I stepped back and let the truth do what it does best, stand on its own. Weeks went by. Then I heard from my ex-wife. She didn't say much. Just forwarded a photo. It was our son, standing proud on a soccer field, clutching a trophy with the kind of smile that hits you right in the chest. She wrote, "First place." He asked if you were watching. I stared at that screen until my eyes stung. Then I opened the photo and whispered one word. Always. Because now I could be. No more emergency patches. No more 3 a.m. emails or red-eye flights to Toronto. No more anniversaries missed, birthdays skipped, or honeymoons postponed for meetings that never mattered. I had finally sold my past. And in doing so, I bought my future. 3 weeks after that board meeting, the company put out a press release. It was bland, polished, sanitized. Effective immediately, Allison Quinn has stepped down as CEO of Peaver Technologies. We thank her for a decade of service. The board will begin searching for new leadership. No mention of betrayal. No hint at diluted shares, boardroom drama, or a brother-sister standoff that tore the company apart. Just a neat, forgettable paragraph. As if 10 years could be brushed aside with 2 lines of copy. But people weren't fooled. Because the moment that announcement dropped, my inbox lit up like a Christmas tree. Journalists, ex-employees, analysts, folks who used to walk past me like I was just some quiet IT guy suddenly wanted to hear my side of the story. I didn't give them anything. I let the silence do the talking. Because by then, the truth had already leaked. In emails. In board notes. In voice memos quietly passed around by people who were done gritting their teeth through Allison's reign. She didn't go out quietly. That's not her style. First came the Medium post, "How misogyny destroyed my company." She painted me as the bitter tech bro who couldn't handle a strong woman in charge. It started gaining traction, until someone posted Slack screenshots. Her calling me a drone with no vision in a company chat. And just like that, the narrative snapped in half. Then came the podcast rounds. She cried. She blamed startup culture. She tried to grab hold of that victim role again. But this time, the silence around her said more than words ever could. People remembered. The marketing assistant she humiliated over a missing semicolon in a tweet. The engineer she called replaceable 2 weeks before his wife's cancer surgery. The HR manager she ghosted after promising equity. The intern fired for flagging a broken benefits portal. No one stood up for her. Not a soul. Even the VCs who once called her a game changer started quietly deleting their praise-filled tweets. And while all that was unraveling, I was half a world away. Literally. I'd flown out to a quiet little village up north in Japan. Booked a room in a traditional ryokan. Left my phone in the room safe and just walked. Wandered through ancient forests, where trees had stood longer than countries have existed. Slept 12 hours a night. Ate plain rice in silence. Read books I hadn't touched since college. One night I broke the spell. Opened my email. Just one. It was from the interim CEO. Subject line, "We'd like to talk." I laughed. Out loud. They didn't want me back as a founder. Or as an investor. They wanted me as a consultant. A fixer. The guy who actually understood how the company's engine worked. I typed out a reply. One sentence. "You'll need more than what you owe me." Then I stared at it and hit delete. Not send. Delete. Because I didn't want it anymore. Not the job. Not the ties. Not the wait. It took 6 months for the noise to die down. By then, Allison had disappeared from the city. I heard, through a friend of a friend, that she was crashing on someone's couch in Miami, trying to start some kind of coaching platform for women entrepreneurs. Her LinkedIn went private. Her TEDx clips stopped circulating. She became background noise. But not for me. I still felt the damage she'd left behind, like an echo bouncing through my family and through me. Even our parents, who had ignored all the warning signs, were stunned. One night they called me. Together. First time in years. "You could have told us," my dad said. "We had no idea it had gotten that bad." I didn't respond. What could I say? "You never asked." Mom cried. "She's still your sister." "Not anymore," I said. "Blood doesn't excuse betrayal. What matters more is respect, trust, loyalty." And she'd lit every bit of that on fire. Then one day, my ex-wife called again. Asked if I wanted to meet our son. For real this time. Not through a screen. Not in passing. A proper visit. We met at a quiet park in Oregon, where she'd moved after the divorce. He was taller than I remembered. Had the same freckles I used to see in the mirror. Wore a hoodie from a summer coding camp. My throat got tight. "Hi," he said, kind of shy. "Mom says you used to build stuff." "I did," I told him. "But I think I forgot how." He tilted his head. "Maybe you could build something with me." We spent the next 4 hours sitting on a bench, piecing together a Raspberry Pi and turning it into a tiny game console. And for the first time in a long time, it felt like I was building something that actually mattered. When the screen lit up, my son laughed like he'd just seen magic happen in real life. "I didn't think it'd actually work," he said, eyes wide with wonder. I just smiled. Sometimes even the broken stuff still surprises you, I said. That night, I sat alone in a rented cabin perched above the coast. The sea air drifted in, mixing with the sound of waves crashing far below. My laptop sat open on the table, blank screen glowing. For the first time in over 10 years, I wasn't writing code. I was writing me. Maybe it was a memoir. Maybe a warning. Probably both. But more than anything, it felt like a confession, an honest record of what it costs to give up everything for something that forgets you the moment you're no longer useful. I gave it a title. Backend. Because most folks only notice the surface stuff, the logos, the speeches, the glittering parties with flowing champagne. What they never see is the toll. The guy who cancels his honeymoon to fix a server crash. The father who misses the birth of his only child because he's pitching investors. The man who silently hands over the deed to his home, hoping it'll keep the lights on one more quarter. The brother who builds the castle and gets turned away at the gates. I still see that man. Every time I look in the mirror. But now I smile. Because I'm no longer hiding behind the title or buried in the backend. I'm the guy who stepped away. Who watched the empire he helped build crumble without ever raising his voice. When I tweeted that single word, sold, they thought it was the ending. Like I dropped the mic and walked off stage. What they didn't realize. That was just the fuse. The fire hadn't even started. The day that tweet caught fire, I got exactly 647 messages in my inbox. Ex-employees, reporters, distant relatives, childhood friends I hadn't spoken to in 20 years. Even Allison's old assistant, the one I once found crying in the break room after Allison screamed at her over a font choice on a slide deck. They all wanted something. Answers. Closure. My version of the truth. But I didn't reply. Not one word. Not because I didn't have anything to say. Because I didn't need to say it anymore. When you've spent 10 years being cut out of your own story, the most powerful thing you can do isn't to shout louder. It's to walk. To stop begging people to see your worth. And to start building a life where their permission no longer matters. The board tried to put a lid on things. They brought in a soft-spoken interim CEO who fired off a morale-boosting email filled with vague optimism. Stuff like looking ahead and honoring the past. Then came the unraveling. In just 8 weeks, 15 employees left. 3 engineers. 2 designers. And the original front-end architect, the guy who built the platform's spine and whose name Allison never once mentioned in interviews. There were no dramatic goodbyes. No viral Medium posts. Just quiet resignation letters. And a phrase that kept popping up again and again. Time to build something I believe in. God, I love those people. I didn't tell them to quit. I didn't have to. They saw what I did. And they realized they were free too. Allison? She went the other way. Full nuclear. She launched a podcast, The Burnout Diaries. Said she was reinventing herself. Called herself a phoenix rising from the ashes. Started doing Instagram lives in beige loungewear, talking about healing and betrayal. I watched exactly 1 episode. She told her audience I had stolen the company from her. Stolen. My own legacy. That was the first time I laughed in weeks. Because I remembered her voice years ago when I mortgaged my home to cover a quarter where cash ran dry. That's what family does, she'd said back then. You believe even when the numbers don't. Well, I believed, and I paid. With my house, my marriage, my health, my entire identity. And now she had the nerve to cry foul? You can dress up in all the linen robes you want, filter your tears for likes, but that doesn't make you the victim. Not everyone who falls deserves the crown. Sometimes the fall just reveals how high you never truly stood. People ask me now, all the time, if you had the chance, would you do it again? Would I build the company from scratch, knowing how it ends? The honest answer? I don't regret building it. I regret not leaving earlier. I regret every birthday I missed. Every anniversary I skipped. I regret the wife who finally gave up on waiting for me to come home. And most of all, I regret thinking someone was coming to save me. Especially family. Because no one weaponizes guilt better than the people who say they love you. Let me say this clearly. You are not wrong for choosing yourself. You are not broken for saying no. You are not cruel for walking away from people who only loved you when you were bleeding for them. You are free. The money from the sale hit my trust account exactly 48 hours after the ink dried. $6.2 million. I could have bought a mansion, filled a garage with Teslas, bought a yacht with a name that meant something. But instead, I bought a mountain, 38 acres of forest in Colorado, built myself a cabin, added solar panels, a satellite uplink, and a silence so pure, it felt like music. No Slack messages, no pitch decks, no investors asking if I could add NFTs to the roadmap. Just wind in the trees, birds in the branches, and the sound of my heartbeat remembering what peace feels like. I set up a studio on the property, painted the walls, installed a workbench. No logo, no brand, no title under my name. I wasn't a founder anymore. I wasn't back-end. I was just me. For the first time in 10 years, I received a letter. A real one. Not an email. Not a DM. A handwritten note in an envelope with no return address. I opened it cautiously, expecting a jab. Instead, I found a simple message. I get it now. I shouldn't have said what I said. I'm sorry. It was signed, Lena, the former marketing director who once publicly told investors I was too technical to lead. I didn't need the apology. But I kept the letter anyway. Because it reminded me. Even the folks who helped bury you sometimes find their way back to the surface, too. Last month, I started building again. Quietly. No buzz. No countdown. Just a simple tool for freelancers. Made with care, not hype. I sent it to a few friends. They shared it. Then a few more. Within 3 weeks, 900 people were using it. No press. No marketing budget. Just gratitude. And with every new user, I send a personal note. Signed, the guy who once disappeared. That line always gets a chuckle. But here's the truth. I didn't disappear. I just walked away from a table where my seat was always in question. And I finally understood something. You don't win by fighting for their approval. You win by building your own house. And locking the door behind you. So if you're reading this, some tired soul who gave it all, only to be told you still weren't enough, let me leave you with this. One day, they'll cut you out. Uninvite you. Pretend you were never part of it. You'll stand outside that glass door, your chest tight, your hands trembling. And you'll think, but I built this. That's when you smile. Turn away. And vanish. Then write down one word. Just one. Sold. Because sometimes, letting go is what sets everything else in motion. And the truth is, you never needed their table. You were the damn house.